Ryan.
Hello, Rachel.
How are you?
Oh, Rachel, I am so ecstatic to be here. We're in the era of Babylon 5 that people love or hate. And so my two hearts are racing at the thought of discussing an episode that some people may love, that some people may despise, but we can all agree it features everyone's favorite character in the show. That's right. Ruel, the Minbari with a goatee. He's my favorite character. Was he yours, Rachel?
No.
What was that? I couldn't hear you.
No.
Why is he not your favorite? Did you not see his strong, powerful facial hair? Hey, real question. We've brought this up. We're near the end of the series, so we can definitively answer this. And we have a guest who will answer this too. Do you agree that the Minbari should or should not have facial hair?
I'm happy either way.
You're happy.
Yeah.
I disagree with it. I think it is wrong that the Minbari have hair. They make a big point about Delenn growing hair, and it's a whole big, oh no, this is different. And then we meet Minbaris with beards, luscious beards, mustaches, goatees. I just can't get past it.
Imagine Ducat without
Daddy
a beard.
Minbaris.
Yeah, you're right. Daddy Ducat had a beard and he was glorious with it. But at the same time, how come no Nans have beards? You know, where are we going to draw the line with aliens with facial hair? Now, we're joined by a guest with a magnificent beard, and he's as everyone in the streets calls him, Beard Tech is in the room with us. Hello, Beard Tech. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing really, really great. Dude, you made that, you said the thing before about like, everyone's favorite character in the show, and like I thought you were gonna say like a main character, but then you subverted it by saying like a minor character that nobody knows, and it was really funny.
He's laughing, but you're an expert. You've been on this podcast before to discuss episodes of interrogation, and so I interrogate you. Do you like Minbaris having facial hair? Are you for it or against it?
Well, let's just say that in my head, I'm now just only thinking about Minbari lumberjacks.
That answers that question. That's what the worker cast, who we never really got to meet, that's what they all look like. Lumberjacks.
They should be on top.
They should be at the... Well, they are the top of the structure now, thanks to Delenn.
I meant sexually.
Talking about sexual stuff, Bartek, could you please tell us a bit about our own podcast? From your point of view as a guest, what does Yum Yum mean in relation to this podcast, and what do we do here?
So, Yum Yum is an infamous line from Star Trek Discovery season something. 1? 2?
2, baby.
Season 2. That a character says... Because before they do the episode, they have to read through this piece of paper called a script.
Oh, no, I'm very brave that you thought they had one, but go on.
They did. I was there. I corrected a typo. They spelled Yum Yum originally. And there was this one point where this married couple named Ryan and Rachel watched the final product of it, known as an episode. And
very bold to call it that as well, but go on.
It was. I was there. And you found it very funny. And Rachel, shocked Pikachu face, like a gasp at the line. And you looked at each other and you said, "This means something.
This means something."
And then 1, 2, skip a few, you made a podcast.
And on that podcast, we go over science fiction television, one episode at a time. We've done Star Trek Discovery. We've been going through Babylon 5. We're nearing the end. And we're here to discuss which episode, Rachel? Do you know the title of it?
The Very Long Night of Londo Mollari.
And we like to read the DVD descriptions for said episode. And Bartek has not read this before. I printed it out on a piece of paper for him to read blind. He's never encountered this. This is his first time through. Rachel and I read it at the end of the last discussion. So Bartek, you get to read it to us again. Enjoy.
And I need to emphasize to everyone, this is my 5th time on Yum Yum, maybe my last time because one of the sci-fi shows I've seen.
Yeah.
And all other times, the description was messaged to me on Facebook, so I would read it off the phone. This one's on paper.
This is and this is from the DVD, so we can assume JMS himself wrote this description. The creator of the show who wrote every episode, basically, he penned this magnificent piece of writing. Go, Bartek.
I'm going to open up the paper. It's upside down. Let me just turn it over. Episode 2, The Very Long Night of Londo Mollari. He's... Why are you laughing, Ryan?
Because you already had a little reaction. Go on.
I didn't even read it. I just read the second word. He's haughty and defiant, but his heart betrays him. A severe cardiac crisis plunges Ascendant Centauri Emperor Mollari into an eerie dreamscape that forces him to confront his mistreatment of the Narns.
He's haughty. He's haughty. And that is it.
Is he haughty?
I guess so.
I guess a little bit.
I'll be realistic with you. I've rarely encountered the word enough to tell you with vivid assertion that he is or isn't haughty. How often do you walk into a room and someone says, Rachel's very haughty today? Not really. Not really.
Does he have a lot of
I don't think
interactions with like peasants or something to be arrogant towards?
Via is the closest.
I don't know.
Do you know what this is? No, I can see you do not. You have that vacant look in your eyes that says, hold my head to your ear, you will hear the sea. This is brivare, very old brivare, very expensive brivare. Do you understand brivare,
Rachel, could you please tell me, in your opinion, who came out of the second episode of season 5 with the potential of saying yum yum?
Jakar as Katasha.
Thank you for clarifying, because there was a few different variants of Jakar in this one.
I was about to correct the statement of it was Emperor Jakataja.
That is very valid, and I completely agree with you. There's no contest here. It has to be him. When he gets into the whipping mode, he's still sitting he's still sitting, but he's so wiggly with each delivery of the numbers that he's almost leaping out of the seat. And I just wanted him to scream yum yum at the end of it all.
So who was distant second?
A distant second to me would have to be Dr. Franklin, when he has the "don't you die on me" kind of attitude. I wanted him to just lean in and say yum yum. Via walks over. Doctor, is this a death watch? Yum yum, Via.
I think my distant second would be the in Londo's head version of Delenn. She's not actually that much different from the regular Delenn, but just something about like the mysterious environment she's in and the very abstract rules that she is following just really complements her performance.
My suggestion is Via when he says goodbye to Lanier at the bar.
Oh, it was very cute. Both of them had the yum yum energy in the bar scene. They were very...
That's kind of cheating because he's...
very silly.
He just complimented the thing he just put in his mouth, so it was yummy.
Will we allow it?
It's delicious.
Bartek? Yeah.
Yum yum.
Yum yum.
What is your relationship with this episode, Rachel?
I loved it. I've always loved it. It makes me sad and happy. And it's stunning.
This is one of my favorite episodes of the show overall, and it's definitely a standout of season 5 in my eyes. Season 5 has a real rough around the edges quality for many viewers. Some people say skip season 5. Many people say that it doesn't get good until after the Byron arc, which is halfway through the season. But this is literally the second episode, and I love all of the character work, of course, and some of the amazing lines of dialogue, but I think of this visually as standing out from what the rest of the series has going on, and I will just say it again, I commend that even in the later parts of its run, Babylon 5 was always finding new, innovative ways visually to tell their story. They would just have some use of the camera or some visual trickery to just liven up a scene, whether it is as simple as Veer in a one-take shot walking through the Zocalo down the hallway to an elevator, and then it turns into a Dutch angle and everyone's gone, and you have to think about, and then all of the extras had to quietly walk away from the set because we're going to have to go back to the bar, and now it's all empty and abandoned. Just even right up to the very last moment, they were still practicing and playing around with what they could get away with on a visual level. But I love this one. I think it's great. Bartek, you've been on here a few times.
Mm-hmm.
You are here as our interrogation expert. We bring you on for episodes where it is about a character being interrogated, whether it is from an external or internal force. And we were mulling over what's season 5's interrogation episode, and it was just, it's the Londo episode. And as someone who's talked about B5 off the mic many times, you have said to me that Londo was one of your favorites, and it's kind of been weird that we've had you on and he's not been in an episode. Like he has not been in any of the episodes you've been on for, not even as a side moment, not even as a one scene wonder.
V's been in like most of them, but not Londo. So this is, 5th time on this podcast, and for every episode up to this point, you told me which episode it was that I'm coming on for, and I would remember, most of like the A plots of all of them. It's like, I already know kind of what to talk about. For this one, I remembered that it happened, but I didn't really remember many details from it. I think I might have been mixing it up with like an earlier episode where I think it was like the bomb threat where a character saved Londo from a bombing.
Yeah,
and
Linnea.
They were in hospital, Linny, yeah. So I remembered like vaguely what would happen in it, but not any of the specifics. And it kind of came back to me. There are a lot of things that I didn't remember. I think the Emperor Kataja Jakar scene, that one rang a few more bells. Obviously the start of the linear arc of the season, happens here. So it was almost a fresh experience. And although I do like the episode, I think that more than the other 4 episodes I've done, this one suffers the most from me not having revisited the show from the beginning, because it's asking me to, see a lot of payoff and introspection about an arc that I haven't, experienced bits of over the past year and a bit since you started since I finished the show even.
And this is the benefit as well of what Babylon 5 was doing at the time. We're in the final season and it's saying to you, you should have watched an episode from 3 years ago to get what I'm doing here in this episode. That's on you, the viewer. And think about television in that time period where you would have had to have been watching it week to week, and if you didn't have it on VHS or you weren't watching it in reruns, you could have missed some of the key episodes. And I think for many people who are fans of the series, Londo and his arc and what he goes through in the show is so vivid and memorable that when you have a whole entire episode dedicated to his inner turmoil about the things he has and hasn't done during the show, it on a dramatic level is hefty, because we have such investment in his character because he is one of the pivotal points of the series and he has a tragic arc that you just can't help but be enamored by. But tell us a bit about Londo from your point of view as someone who, again, for people, if you have not heard Bartek on this podcast before, you're not really a big sci-fi guy. I gave you Babylon 5 to watch at some point a while back now, like a year and a half ago or so.
Yeah, 2021.
And just said, go on, pull the trigger here and enjoy the ride. And
yeah,
so,
you'd been talking big about it for many years up to that point, and it was the one in my head. It's like, if I do check out one thing, I guess it would be that. From early on, obviously, I had to get my footing into the show. You were warning me very extensively about the gathering's not really the best thing. You have to kind of pull that Band-Aid off, and I was all right with it. But I was delaying on starting the first season. But in terms of things that had an easy appeal to me, like the funny foreign guy, who's always at the bar. He's kind of got this very hammy delivery about a lot of things, and is also very introspective and has these kind of very deliberate line deliveries about like remores and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was easy for me to say like, oh yeah, that's a fun character. Like, I don't think at any point I really ever said like, oh yeah, he's my favorite character, but it would just be like whenever I brought him up, it would be with a lot of fondness in my voice.
All of the bottles here are empty? The metaphor is getting a bit thick, don't you think?
And it's not all about Londo and the very long night of Londo Mollari. We should talk about our good, dear friend Lanier. And Rachel, you and I have been going on quite the dark path with Lanier as a character, because we've been really coming to terms with whether or not the Lanier arc is not only good, but is it... It's that thing of... we have to get past if we find it enjoyable or not, because as people who just watch this series, we just say we don't like the linear arc because they take them in a direction we don't personally like. But does it work in spite of our own emotions wanting to reject what they do with him? Because I like Lanier as the loving assistant who's noble and willing to sacrifice his life for anyone, including Londo. And he's got a good heart, and he's a wise character and a religious character. But then midway through the show, they twist and turn him and make those things framed in a very sinister light as it goes along. And so we have Lanier here. Rachel, tell us a bit about what's going on with Lanier.
Well, we get your favorite character.
Yes.
Breaking the news to Delenn that Lanier is leaving.
Lanier used her authority for it as well. Very shifty, very not on Lanier. That's not very honorable. That's not very honest, Mr.
No.
Minbaris don't deceive and lie. So that already sets it, but that does set the tone of there's already something off about it. It's not just, oh, Lanier's leaving. Oh no, it's Lanier is leaving and he's doing it in a way that's not right.
Yeah. When confronted, he still tries to hide it. Like, Delenn clearly knows, but he's just like, so your agenda for today, huh? Let's look at that. Let's talk about that.
I didn't think they would move so quickly.
I was totally going to tell you after dinner tonight.
Why, Lanier? Why? Well, a good meal before bad news is a winning combination.
Valen said.
Valen. No, our friend Jeff said, shut the fuck up, Lanier. I love Bill Mooney's performance in this episode. If there's anything to take away from Lanier's journey, is the actor does such a great job. Even if I don't like what they're doing with the character, I never falter in believing that this is happening. Like, this is coming from the person playing the role. I may have quibbles and I may have shakes of the finger at JMS's writing, but Bill Mooney brings this to life in a really raw and uncomfortable way, even humorous. There's, like I just said, that line, it's a little bit funny. You go, oh, Lanier, you silly little guy. But Rachel, what do you think about Lanier leaving?
I think it's the right kind of stupid decision for him to be making, and I do enjoy that he invokes Marcus when he's explaining that he's going to go join the Rangers, and that it's really dangerous because Marcus also joined the Rangers for the wrong reasons, but did good things.
It is explicitly stated, I am going to fill that vacuum. I will take Marcus's place. But the thing is, Marcus was the lovelorn man who had lost everything, joined this group for a cause that was inevitably going to lead to death because he had a death wish. And so Lanier, being locked in this situation in his heart where he doesn't know what to do, looks at Marcus, who is this heroic figure, but he doesn't have the Lanier is often played at times in a very childlike way. I think of season 1 when he went to the casino with Londo and he's looking at everything with awe. And even though Bill Mumy...
He fucks a motorcycle.
He has his motorcycle obsession. Bill Mumy, although I think basically the same age as the actress who plays Delenn, he has just such a baby face and a lilting voice. And so Lanier doesn't have the emotional maturity to understand some things, but then also he really does at other times. And when it comes to this romantic inclination he has, he's really grasping at straws. And so he looks at somebody with a similar problem to him and thinks, oh, I should do that. But we, the audience, know, no, you shouldn't. Look what happened to Marcus. Bartek, what are your thoughts on Lanier in this episode and the beginning of this journey he will go on in the season?
It was obvious that, he had feelings for Delenn and he had to grapple with that. But I would have assumed, based on, the events of this episode and just how I thought, this is a character we like, that in the end his arc would be some sort of coming-of-age story where he... I was going to say gets over his feelings, but that's not quite it. He manages to reach some sort of...
potentially grows out of his feelings.
Grow out or reach some sort of happy place with his feelings where he can move on. And, what literally happens in this episode is absolutely perfectly fine for that sort of arc that I'm envisioning. And it also works perfectly fine for the arc that the writers were going for. So, it has all the potential.
Say writers, plural?
Just JMS.
Or just JMS, sure. I don't know the show as well as you guys. So.
Yes.
No, we really weren't kidding. He writes...
He writes 90 out of 100 episodes or so, but go on.
I was speaking for the 10%.
Yes.
But I agree with what you were saying. I liked Lanier a lot in the show because he comes across he's the very wise character who will always be able to, give you the Minbari perspective and eloquently explain it and apply it to the situation. But when you actually look at what the character is, it's that he is singularly focused on all those elements and is, masterful at talking about them and being calm about it. And you realize that, okay, but when it comes to the matters of the heart, that's where he really struggles and he's trying to sort of grapple with that and trying to apply what he knows. So purpose. I need to somehow deal with this problem with purpose. So I will follow, what Marcus did. I will leave the station. This is something that I need to do to fulfill the purpose. Whereas, you also look at the literal thing of okay, he's getting away from his problems as well. So it's a character who is trying to use what he knows, but also doesn't, or maybe he does realize that he's also kind of running away.
That is directly brought up, I do believe, by Sheridan, who asks, is this just him running away from his issues?
Yes, he did say that.
And so that is planted in the audience's mind, because if you're going through the series for that first time or you're more optimistic, you can very much see it like how you were describing of hopefully who have this awakening and he'll have a positive outlook on life and a good ending, because we like Lanier, so we want a positive ending for a character we liked.
Yeah, he's been
and the positive ending is not going to be that he ruins Delenn's marriage.
Yes, or ruins his own honor.
Because up to this point, he has been a good impact on many of the characters.
Oh, yes, indeed he do. And so when you know that it does not go well for Lanier, and you come back to something like this, you now look at it as the building blocks to his own demise or his own destruction, and it makes it sad. And that is...
It was a lot more unpleasant this time, or sad, rather.
Something that makes Babylon 5 what it is, which is even a character you like, somebody who has been a very honorable, virtuous person, that doesn't guarantee they get a happy ending, because that doesn't happen all the time. That's not how reality works. And Babylon 5 as a series has done that many times over. Character struggles, characters go through a lot. Londo's internal dreamscape shows that with many of the people around him, that Londo's really made everyone else suffer around him as well. But Linnea, we like Linnea. We want well for him. So when it doesn't go well for him, we go back and say, well, how did that happen? How did we come to this point? And this particular episode is a real bitter pill to swallow, because I think it's really well written for Linnea. I think that although this is the part of the story that I'm not as engaged by because it's not as wonderfully magical and calling back to all of these big, huge moments like the Londo stuff, this is quiet. Just like Linnea. He's a quiet character. So his side of the story being this quiet version of what Londo is going through, where he is having to look through his life and say, what do I do when it comes to the heart? And here he's making the opposite choices of Londo, where Londo is going to directly confront the things that has been hurting him. Linnea is going to deflect those and mask it and walk away. And, well,
because he's not ready to deal with it. Londo is done running, and Linnea has just started.
Is there any chance you can talk him out of leaving?
No. You must follow the calling of his heart.
And if he's not? I mean, if he's just running away to avoid the situation here?
The universe will teach him what he needs to know.
We know what's going on here. And Delenn responds. She says, yes, I know. She says, yes, I know what this is all stemming from. And yet, throughout the rest of the episode, she still is playing this card of, but you swore yourself to my side. You're supposed to be here for me, Linnea.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that the issue is of your romantic inclinations for me, but
suppress it. Come on.
Come on, be here for me. Does Linnea come out of this poorly because he just isn't assertive enough? Because I think he does as good a job as he can in this scenario
in
right
this
now.
scenario and with his values, because he would never confront Delenn openly. He wouldn't be like, no, I have to leave. I love you. You're married. It breaks my heart every day seeing you with John. Like, that's not how this character would deal with this situation.
But should he? Is this a case of, in one story, we see the character who is usually very extrovert get to be able to redeem his soul because he can be extrovert when it's needed, while the introverted character cannot because he is inherently someone who does not have the ability to vocalize things?
For me, I would rather it be that Delenn listens to Linnea, because he is saying basically that, but in his own way and hiding it, of like, it is the calling of my heart to go work with the Unlashark. I have to leave. It's too hard to be here. And she's just like, but you said. And if she said, okay, like, I'm sad that you are leaving, but do what's right for you, I think it would have been a much better situation for Linnea to be in. Because the fact that Delenn is still indicating that she needs him, that she wants him in some way, still flickers the flame. It's not her intentions. But she doesn't.
She's not resolving it either.
No, she refuses to confront it, which is the way that she's responded to this before. Like, we've had her realize like Lanier's feelings much earlier. And so it's like she knows.
Yes.
She knows. And she doesn't seem to care what it's like for Lanier to be so lovelorn and to see it all of the time and see her be happy with somebody else and recognize that that is heartbreaking because to her, Lanier is an aid.
He's her rock in a lot of ways that John isn't. And so if he decides to up and leave, who will replace that? And I do not
I need my Minbari half.
Yes, I need my Minbari half with me. Yeah, that's true. And Delen's been played very well when it comes to this previously, where you, the viewer, go, okay, she knows what's going on with Lanier. She isn't saying it out loud because hopefully they can mend this without having the uncomfortable conversations. But this particular episode brings it to a point in which now Delen, not only as the person that's in this, but also as the boss, as this guy's boss, has to make a decision, actually has to make a call, and in a lot of ways, she goes the wrong direction.
Also, she's number one.
Yeah.
She could pull the card of no.
Yeah, she's the Ranger number one, and it's just one of those things where I find it very intriguing that in season 5, our heroes don't always make the correct decisions. John completely blows up the telepath situation as the season goes along. Delen, in a lot of ways, fumbles her duties to Lanier because just to be real with people here, I mean, Rachel, you and I are in a relationship. We're married. We've been together for over a decade. If this was us and there was an outside force, like I'll just use Bartek as an example. If Bartek, who we've also known for a very long time, if he had this relationship with you, wouldn't you say like, oh, it's probably best that we don't hang out in the way that we have been currently because it's now framed in a way that is unhealthy for the relationship of not only you and Bartek, but of us as a couple, Rachel. Like, John even references it in this episode where he's like, well, three's a company.
It's like,
three's a crowd. And
Ryan,
then she's like, three's sacred of my world.
It's like, Ryan, yeah, look, I'm not going to make a move, but being here makes me unhappy. I have to leave it. What about speaking Polish? I need you for that.
Yeah. Bartek, what are your thoughts on this?
You know what? Same words that I said about Lanier. It is a matter of the heart. Even though I don't have that much relationship experience, I do feel a lot of empathy for Delen as well, for the simple element of when people go away, you miss them. And, you know, she spent, like half a decade working with this guy here who, in many ways, has made her job that much better, has made it successful. They've gotten a happy, well, she's gotten a happy ending where she's together with the guy. But even on a more professional level, like they succeeded in the war. They've gone through
both of the wars, like the Minbari War, the Shadow War, and the Civil War.
Yeah,
Lanier was there when
3.
she got exiled as
yeah,
well.
It's almost 100 episodes where, you know, Lanier played a part in most of those episodes, and you know, he makes her better in some way. And now this element of her life that she is fond of and, you know, makes things better is now going away. And she, on a personal level, doesn't want that to go away, doesn't want change because change is scary, but also is conflicted because she does want what's best for him. And she is clearly struggling too with like, well, what do I do here? I'm kind of stuck with my element of like, please don't go. And I'm not quite, you know, finding an alternative that suits us both here. So it's relatable on both fronts, I think.
How do you feel about the whole linear outcome, and how does it impact you when you go back to an episode like this?
Unfortunately, I was not there when the script was written, so I couldn't fix it, unlike me choosing not to fix Discovery. But yeah, when it did happen, it was a little bit of a surprise, and I guess because I wasn't finished with the show yet, I didn't necessarily know that that's the end of the arc, where, yeah, he tries to, in the spur of the moment, decides to leave Sheridan to suffocate.
Yes.
And it was a surprise, and I did think, well, there's got to be a bit more to that, but then it didn't end up being the case, and then I think you started telling me about how the actor, Bill Mumy, also, like, just really didn't like what they did with the character, and it did kind of leave me with this really weird feeling in the end where, yes, you were saying earlier that not everyone will have a happy ending, but and I can buy that, you know, maybe this character doesn't have the happy ending now, but, like, the fact that he ends with, like, his reputation kind of being besmirched from
his tail between his legs.
I wouldn't say that I hate it, but yeah, it didn't really sit right with me.
He dies too in the final episode. He's one of the people that they toast. Delenn toasts to him. He's one of the people that they toast to in the They Died.
Forgot about that.
So in the viewer's experience of the show, he died with no honor. We don't know that. That could be something that happened in this time, but like in our viewership, it's he acted dishonorably and then he died.
It's like even with Londo, like obviously we saw his ending back in season 3, so we got that, you know, ahead of time. But from what I recall, like the last we see of him in like episode wise, he is like it's a pleasant scene, right?
No,
wasn't it? Was it not?
He's trying to tell his friends that he's being mind controlled, and then they don't let him have alcohol, and he's just
right,
and he's going to put a keeper on their son.
Okay, I misremembered.
But in the confines of the timeline, he redeems himself in the end because he gives up to his greatest fear, knowing it will destroy him, and him and Jakar are friends.
I guess to try and defend what I said, he was trying to warn them, and that is that's the more honorable thing than just try to kill them.
To connect the two plots together a bit more so, we do have Lennier and Via meeting up at the bar. They talk about what they're both going through, but this pairing has always been one that brings joy to myself because they're characters that are very similar to one another. They're the aides to these powerful people. They're nice. We look at Via and we smile. We look at Lennier and we smile. They're good people. And yet they are on drastically different arcs where Via used to be the guy who would stumble over his words and didn't know what to say. And yet now he's gotten to this point where he'll stand up to Londo. He'll let his opinions be known. He's still a nervy little guy, but he lets it be known. And they have their delightful little back and forth about the Shirley Temple, and Bill Mumy gets that wonderful comedic line delivery of like, I don't know this temple. I must make sure to go there when I visit Earth next time. And they discuss that it's been a hell of a day, hell of a year, hell of a life. You win. And then
that whole exchange where they were trying when they were trying to one up each other, even if they haven't had that many scenes. Again, I haven't seen the show in a while, so maybe I'm forgetting the 90 billion scenes, but it said everything right there. Like, okay, this is like an established relationship of these two people that are in very similar situations going on different arcs.
As Mr. Garibaldi would say, it's been one hell of a day.
Yes, a hell of a day.
And a hell of a year.
A hell of a 5 years.
Hell of a life.
You win.
So Londo has a heart attack. They think it's poison in his breviary, but he has a heart attack because he's stressed out. He has a lot of stress and guilt and burdens on his soul and heart that he has to work through. And you get Dr. Franklin giving all the medical exposition. He's like, here's the two hearts. This is how they work. And he looks at you, the audience, and says, do you get it? We explained it.
I like in the trivia that I pointed out that he made 2 gaffes, though.
No. Medical gaffes.
He said, like, pulmonary instead of cardial. Oh. And then he said something about archery instead of hearts.
Oh, wow. There you go, Franklin. You're kicked out of the profession. You're not allowed in there now.
Hey, don't say that. He might shoot you with a bow and arrow.
No, don't do that. Not in my heart. So the heart attack is an excuse to give us an episode where we grill Londo, where Londo has to deal with the consequences of his actions. Because we've entered this stage of the show where you like Londo again. Admittedly, I got very comfortable with Londo. I'm like, oh, it's Londo, he's fun. Yeah, he's wearing all black and all that, but look, he's making jokes again. And then this one comes along and says, you can't do that. You can't just be happy with him because he hasn't even done the bare minimum. He hasn't even said sorry. The bare minimum. He hasn't even done that. He's not sorry for what he did. He's just sorry because he got caught, as Jakar says. And it really puts me as a viewer in the hot seat. Now, Rachel, we've done a lot of episodes on this podcast that involve a gimmick. That involves a writing trick or a directional trick that allows for some hijinks and shenanigans. And this is one where Londo has a heart attack and we get to go into the black box theater of Babylon 5, into the dreamscape land.
Like a twist on the shadow dancing one, yeah.
Yes. And so what do you think about how this episode uses the gimmick nature as the framework to dissect one of its main characters?
Stunning. I just think it's stunning. You were already talking about some of the cinematography decisions, like the Dutch angle, blending changeover in the corridor. It's just wonderful. And it really does build on previous episodes that have done a very similar thing, and also ones that have entered the dreamscape. And I love the way that they use dream logic throughout this and reuse the sets, but change them slightly and make it unnerving. Like the one that I really think about is Sheridan changing outfits as he's talking to Londo, and how the costume reflects the lines in a very important thematic way, but each of them at a different stage of Londo's development
and Sheridan's change. Yeah, and they even go out of their way to give us really abstract camera work. For a split second, there's this shot leading to the Sheridan scene where they've strapped the camera to the actor, and it's right on his face, and he's walking, and you feel like the bobs of each one of his footsteps, and it's there for maybe 5 seconds. It's really not there for long, and it's like, why did they add that? And it's like, it adds to the overall tapestry of the assertion that this episode is putting down. Like, we're in this dreamscape,
unsettling,
but we're
familiar.
But we're also being in an uncomfortable spot with the character. He's
up close and personal
in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, a dream is a very personal, introspective experience, so you want to have things like that.
And this series has dealt with dreams constantly. They've had them throughout the series, so to have an episode that is basically a dream for the runtime is justified because it's been slowly building towards that for the 5 seasons. If this was just a random, here you go, because it's a fun idea, because with gimmick episodes of shows, sometimes the gimmick is something so fun and lovely that you just enjoy it and say it's good. Like, oh, it's a musical episode. I love musicals, so yay. But then there are those other times where when a series is struggling to tell its stories, they throw in random stuff to liven it up, and it falls flat because it's going against the grain of what you're wanting from the show. And so in another series, if they said in the final season, oh yeah, there's an episode from the point of view of 2 maintenance workers, or there's an episode from about Londo and his dreamscape, you could raise your eyebrow and go, it doesn't sound like they're really doing that well by the end of the show, huh? But in my opinion, it's one where it's like, no, this has just been something that grows from where we've been going in the series. You said shadow dancing as a great example, where this is just an escalation of a similar idea of an interrogation of one's self.
Yeah, Rachel kind of nailed it earlier when she mentioned that it's kind of an evolution of stuff we've seen before, because it's like, listing the episodes that I've been on for Yum Yum, you've got, it's in his head, you've got elements of torture at the end, you've got the fact that the other characters aren't actually there, which is the other Franklin, and I guess psychology for the last season one.
Yeah.
You got this all in this one. And it's an interesting mix, because I actually think it's a bit more low key than the last two. Because, you know, the shadow dancing one, Franklin was dying and it was himself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't run from yourself, and it was very direct, very brutal. And the last season one, like, you know, we've already talked about how there are people who can't rewatch that episode because it's too much for them. Whereas for this one, you know, Londo is walking through these environments. He's talking to characters that aren't there, but
he knows them.
He knows them,
Yeah.
and it's his kind of view on them. And they're not necessarily like going as strong as like the other Franklin was. They are
No, it's
very
not as confronting.
yeah. It's more low key. They're asking him questions, and they're like pushing him to like, look, this is what you need to do. You need to turn around. You have that recurring line. And yeah, it is just very much, as you brought up, the dream element. It makes for a very psychological episode in a dreamlike way, where you have just a lot of very interesting little things. Like we've already talked about the shot that transitions from, you know,
reality to dream.
To reality to dream, and then it like goes onto the Dutch angle, and the lighting becomes a bit more red. I really loved the element of like, you need to turn around, and Londo, and the way that the shot is framed with like showing that Jakara's behind him. Like, there is no doubt in Londo's mind of like, I know what that means. He does know what that means. And when he says, I can't, without, you know, thinking about like, what could that mean? It shows that like,
he knows.
He knows. He understands exactly what is being asked of him, and it's something that he needs to confront, and it's visually being shown in a very interesting way.
Jakar teases this at the end. Is this just your brain running out of oxygen and it's creating all of this? Is this a remnant of our telepathic connection from seasons ago? Or is this just me as your conscience, and I've trapped you here in your weakest moment, in your weakest spot, so I can finally talk to you? And you look at the rest of this and you go, oh, all of this is Londo talking to himself. And the thing is, that's very uncomfortable but wonderful on a dramatic level about Londo is, you want to be able to hate Londo because he's become a villainous character over time.
He has done such awful things.
Awful things.
How can you like him when he has done so much evil?
But this episode highlights something that's been throughout every episode of him, which is he has the ability for introspection. He has the ability to...
The power of choice. He still has that. He still has that. And the prophecy really helped him realize that he still had these opportunities to change his fate.
And he squandered a few of them. But you as a viewer sometimes want to look at characters who do bad things and say, well, now I can look at them in the villain light and how fun. But even when Londo was doing that, he would have these haunted expressions on his face because he knows what he's doing is bad. He knows what he's doing is wrong. And it can make people uneasy that even the monster, someone like Londo, they even say at the end, like, even the most, like, these high spirits, these high souls of our old folklores would only live in the most horrid people, the most monstrous of soul, like, bodies. Even monsters can sometimes have the ability to recognize what they're doing is bad. And you just want the narrative to easily be, well, they're bad, and we can, like, Lord Reefer, yeah, we can just stomp them to death and it'll be fine. But Londo, in this entire run of the episode, is just constantly in this dreamscape that is saying, you know better. You know better than this. You know that these are all excuses to run away from the most uncomfortable thing, which is to admit your wrongdoing, to say, that you did the bad.
I've never apologized.
I've never apologized for anything in my life.
Just a word, Mollari. That's all it takes.
I've never apologized for anything in my life.
And what I adore so much about the Delenn conversation is she's the only one in his dream that isn't the real, that isn't how they are in real life. She doesn't even have the bone on her head, for Christ's sake, but he looks at her in real life as a fortune teller, as this mystical person who, when in doubt, I could go to Delenn and she'll tell me what I need to do. And so he walks in, and there she is in this black veil, and she's got the tarot cards of his past, and we see there's all of these moments of his life that we've watched during the show, and I just really like that attention to detail that Londo, throughout the entire series, has always referred to Delenn in a way that has never been real. There's that conversation in season 3 where he said, "I miss that we don't talk anymore, Delenn," and she just retorts with, "We never really talked, Londo." Because they never really have been friends. And his relationship to her has always been this projection of something else. And even in his dream, she's this otherworldly figure, while everyone else is closer to what we know them to be. But here she is as the one dealing out the cards of his past. You can't even see them because it's so drenched with blood.
And you also get the other side of that when she and Sheridan, looking at him in the, I almost said psych ward, in med lab, and she talks about like all the sorts of feelings she's had for him throughout the years and concluding with like, I will miss him if he goes.
She's never felt sorry for him before.
Never felt sorry for him before.
Felt pity, but not sorry.
They've never been friends, but there was a fondness there.
Yeah.
The dream logic goes in hard at the beginning because it's very much a black void. Londo wears all black, so he looks like a floating head, which is very beautiful to watch. I love that. And he's talking to Delenn, who's all in black, and so we just see floating hands and this face that's shrouded underneath this veil.
It starts off with a lot of stimulus because the first thing you see, from what I recall, is like he's in this kind of crowded hallway. It almost looked like it was like the inside of a ship or something.
Yeah, it's on Babylon 5.
Yeah.
It looks like down below.
Yeah, it would have been Babylon 5, but I just thought it looked like a pirate ship like interior.
Yeah.
With all these like curtains around. It's like, where am I? What's going on here? And it did feel very dreamlike of like these are stimuli that he's had recently. And then he goes through a curtain and now he's in a black room, even though it didn't really feel like he was entering a new room. And then from that point onwards, it's like very much one-on-one scenes until, the torture where there's more characters because it's recalling a scene from earlier in the show.
And Rachel, Delenn asks him, does he want to live?
Yeah, he doesn't immediately say yes. He is asked multiple times and she's like, I can't ask you again.
He gives the same answer the first 2 times.
Yeah.
What difference does it make?
And that's Londo's justification for why he can't do better. What difference does it make?
Also, the justification for why he can't apologize.
Yes. We've seen it over and over and over again to be his rationale for why he continues to do horrible things, which is, it's too late. There's no ability to change this. What does it matter?
It's done.
It's done. Even if I tried, no one would be able to take it from me. He goes on in this particular one as well about how no one will miss me when I'm gone. And she says, you're right.
No one on Homeworld.
No, he specifically says no one back home will miss me. And she says, oh, yeah, no one will miss you. But how do you interpret that? Like, is he talking about Homeworld as like physical Centauri? Is he just talking about, home being, because he sees Babylon 5 as home?
Mm-hmm. But I think he knows that
Via.
He knows that Via will miss him.
But he also doesn't because he constantly tries to undervalue Linnea.
And
Via.
But didn't the Veer in his head say he'll miss him?
But that was later.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, in this episode, he keeps contradicting himself to prove his own points. Like,
because
Delenn is him.
Also considers Via a sort of threat because of the prophecy and how it says that like both of them will be emperor. So he's like, oh, well, Veer will be happy if I die because then he'll just be emperor straight away, right?
And he envies Veer because he sees himself in Veer, but Veer has that innocence. He still has good within him while Londo rejects that. But that's...
Oh yeah, isn't there some other episode where he has like a speech basically around that
Yeah,
idea?
he does, and they hug. You have somehow walked through the halls of power and you still have your innocence.
Yeah, that's it.
I just don't think you've been paying attention.
Was that before or after this episode?
That was in season 4. That's when they were about to kill Katarja.
Okay.
Which relates to this. But yeah, the thing about Londo is he knows.
He knows.
He knows all of this. And yet, like with any of us or any person, you have doubts and you have that voice in your head or your mind that says otherwise. So he constantly has this voice that says, it's too late for me. It won't make any difference. No one will miss me when I'm gone. And yet, in this dreamscape, he's encountering people that says the opposite of that because he knows that to be true, but constantly he will say, no, it isn't. And so, whoopsie daisy, I committed a war crime. Whoopsie daisy, my friends are now isolating me from everything. Oh, well, I never had friends anyway. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Except for your heart is literally strangling itself to tell you that it fucking matters, Londo.
Yeah, he's got a second one.
He's got to say, well, yeah, but that's all muscle. That would be easier to work with. And he says...
That could be fixed. Problems of the body are easily fixed. Problems of the soul are not.
He says to Delenn that he has no choice. I don't have a choice in this. It's not up to me. I could just die here now. And the theme of choice is...
Screw fate.
Yeah, I could screw fate right now. If I've seen my death for 20 years of my life. If I die, I'm getting one over on fate. That will teach it a lesson. But the theme of choice is something that has been heavily connected to Londo throughout the entire run of the series. Every time he is confronted with something, he falls back on the, I had no choice. It wasn't up to me. And Bartek, for you as someone who has only watched this show once and you're coming back to it, and you said that this episode is one that does rely on a lot of things from the past, how about that? The recurring idea of choice being something that Londo does not think he has afforded to him.
I like that has been present from basically the very beginning of his, I was going to say descent, but I've also called it the rising descent, since, he met Morden and he's gone on this journey of, committing war crimes while elevating himself, where he constantly realizes, like, I've just made another bad decision, but I have to stand by it because, this is the position I'm in. It's a big conflict and he has to try and find, the middle ground there, but he just keeps missing the middle ground and keep going up in that one direction. And you get to this point here where it's being forced on him that you have to, we're in your dream right now, Londo. What happens here isn't going to affect the outside world directly. The fact that you get whipped here isn't going to affect the outside world. This is finally the time where you have to just answer the question directly. It's not what does it matter, it's yes or no. You have to finally confront what you've done, what you feel about it, what you want from here on out, and then do the best that you can in real life. And when he does wake up and the immediate thing he does is turn to Jakar and say sorry, it clearly has some sort of impact because it's something different that he's doing, something unexpected, and kind of flying off the seat of my pants here.
No, but it makes everyone involved surprised. Londo, this is something he didn't expect from himself. Jakar is so overwhelmed by emotion that he can't even respond. He has to leave. And Veer, who's somebody who's been pushing for Londo to do this since the beginning, his jaw is just wide, like down on the floor.
That's the main point. Yeah, he's finally done an introspection. He's acted as a result of it, and the characters are blown away by it, and it will affect the goings on with him from here on.
And
It's really, now that I say it, it's pretty simple but effective.
It is.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Londo keeps making it seem like it's this really complicated thing that one can never do.
Because if he continues to be a centauri about things, he can't.
But Veer also proves that that's bullshit.
Yeah.
At the end,
He
Veer
proves that you can be a better version of yourself when you don't limit yourself to what is expected of you and what society says that you have to do. When you do what is right because you know it is right, that is when you make the world better.
What's wrong with me?
What's wrong with you is you. Your heart can no longer bear the weight of your conscience.
There's nothing wrong with my conscience.
No? Then turn around.
Veer goes to Londo as this voice of reason and says, prophecy, when it doesn't come true, is just a metaphor. That's what it is. You can go prophecy, 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 and even when it doesn't come true, you can say, well, it still means something. And then it's like, well, and then you'll die tomorrow, and then the dream's a metaphor, and then you're a metaphor. Like, it doesn't mean anything, Londo. You actually have to take accountability.
You make meaning. It doesn't make it on its own.
I think another, earlier when we were talking about the Linny thing, I kept bringing up that notion of like the matter of the heart. I think a matter of the heart that Londo has here is, and this relates to a lot of things that a lot of people have in real life, is the inability to recognize that something can be so simple. This like leads into the topic of like, conspiracy theories and stuff. It's like something this big with all these big consequences must have an equally complicated backstory about it. So I remember one example I once heard was it was about the JFK assassination. The president of the United States is one of the most powerful people in the world, was assassinated so simply. There had to have been like a huge conspiracy about it. Like there must have been like X, Y, Z, blah, 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 all this leading up to it. Versus apparently there was a attempted assassination on, I think, Reagan or something.
Yeah.
That failed. And because it failed, it was just like, oh yeah, there was an assassin and he failed. It was just that simple.
And he was spurred on by Taxi Driver and Jodie Foster and all that. Yeah.
But it was just
who cares? It's not a big conspiracy.
Yeah, it wasn't a conspiracy because he failed. So it couldn't have been.
If it was successful, then it was an inside job and it was funded by the Russians and so on and so forth. You would love Quantum Leap, by the way, where there's a two-part episode about Lee Harvey Oswald that was written because the writer personally knew and served with Lee Harvey Oswald and just was from the point of view of, yeah, one man with a gun can kill the president.
I think you've told me about this episode, actually, yeah. But yeah, it relates to Londo's whole thing about, like, making all the excuses. It can't be this way. I've done this, I've done that. I can't even begin to try
one word.
Fail to...
They keep on saying it. It's one word.
It can't be as easy as that.
It must be at least two.
I can't just say sorry and then things are better. And so we get Veer, and he also just keeps dismantling everything about what Londo says, because Londo wants to be an edgelord in a weird way, where he's like, no, I'm going to be alone, and everything's miserable, and there's no hope for me. No one will miss me, and I love Stephen Furst as Veer. He does... Again, emphasis, everyone's giving a great performance in this episode. The visuals are great, but the performances are what you really leave with. And when Veer says, and his voice breaks, he says, I'll miss you. I'll miss you. And Londo just in that breathy, I know. Just, I guess you would, wouldn't you, Veer? And I guess I'd miss you too. Just this bravado. What's it in aid of? Nothing. Jakar comes in and he looks at Londo and says, you're a piece of shit. You are the worst type of person. You said nothing. You had an obligation. You don't deserve to be the emperor. You don't hold the values that you want of yourself, let alone of someone who leads your people, and you don't even deserve to live. We cut back to Reefer, hey, Londo, let's go to the non-home world. We're ready to go. Yay!
You said nothing. You did nothing.
You went to the non-home world and bombed us. You killed the innocent. You killed people who couldn't defend themselves. You murdered civilians. I didn't murder them. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Yeah, I had a front seat view of the whole entire thing, and I helped make it so that our people could do that, but I didn't personally push the button, so it wasn't on me.
Well, from my perspective, and it's really interesting hearing you guys talk about it, of the perspective of the viewer to play a judge, because I didn't have that really. I saw all of that potential of like, oh yeah, he's feeling bad about it. There is clearly a conflict there. I need to see this through to the end before I truly have like a conclusion about like, you know, what is this character in the end? So when you ask the question of like, would he be saved in my eyes? It's like, yeah, that still remains to be seen. It's not at the dead end yet. We're not at the bad ending yet. There's certainly bad things that have happened along the way. But we need to see the arc through to the end. So I can't remember who it was, but there was one person you were talking about a year or so ago who a character did something. It might have been Londo, you know, finally committing the war crimes. They said, well, I can't like this character anymore. And my personal reaction to that was like, but you don't have to have that sort of restriction on yourself. Mm-hmm. You can just choose to still be open about it and like see it through and, you know, be able to address the arc as a whole rather than jump to a conclusion in season 2.
I very much align with what you're talking about. There's this level, but also, and I have a real tough time when a show still likes characters that aren't people you should like.
Oh, like, didn't you have it with that Hitler character from
in Star Trek Discovery? Yeah. I have a real problem when a show has an infatuation with a character like that and doesn't have enough depth and nuance of it. Well, for my viewership of Babylon 5, they do. There's many times over, even just this episode's existence is saying, we haven't forgiven Londo. The show hasn't. The writer, the creative voice is still wrestling with that as well. It's not saying like, well, he's back to being a funny guy and we're all good, thumbs up for Londo, yay, it's a wonderful life for him now. The fact that he is unable to forgive himself because he hasn't even done the thing of saying, I'm sorry to Jakar is speaking in volumes about how aware that this series is about the character's morality scale, because he hasn't said sorry. He hasn't even done that. And if the show just walked away in the final season and be like, him and Jakar are friends now, how dare you? I'd be like, how dare you try and tell me that? This is something where the character is killing himself because he hates himself so much. And I sit there as someone watching it going, yes, I love that. Because on some level, I also hate Londo because he's done things that are just atrocious, literal atrocities. And yet I delight in the character because he's so well written, so well performed, so well realized. In the end, Londo says sorry. He says he's sorry. He beats on the glass. He's grabbing at his own heart and just being like, I'm sorry, I've done the wrong thing.
You get the big dramatic sorry in the head, and then in real life, the very weak and sincere one.
Yeah.
And then Jakar cuts his hand and goes, dead.
Oh, that was a great scene.
And Veer goes, oh, I remember that.
And then he claps.
And then he looks in the camera, do you remember that?
The show
got very weird after he apologized, yeah.
I mean, Rachel, I've got to ask you, as someone who's been doing the whole podding experience.
Yeah.
We've gone over the Londo character so thoroughly during our time because he's the character that the series goes over so thoroughly.
Yes.
Could have fooled me. I wasn't there for any of that.
What do you think about Jakar's statement about you're not sorry because of what you've done, you're sorry because you got caught?
Yeah. I think there is some truth to that. But I don't think it's the whole truth. Because Londo does regret being known for those things. but he did not regret them when he was in that moment, when he was offered that choice.
They would not have stopped.
You're wrong, Mollari. Whether it was me or my world, whether it was a total stranger or your worst enemy, you were a witness. It doesn't matter if they'd stop. It doesn't matter if they'd listen. You had an obligation to speak out.
I couldn't.
And that's why you don't deserve to be emperor. And that's why you don't deserve to live.
It's that time of the show, Rachel. It's your favorite part of the episode. It's when I turn on the spotlight. No, not the Michael Keaton film classic. No, Bartek turned off the lights in the room, and now we've got the spotlight happening. The part of the show where we talk about an actor or actress that appeared in the episode. We go over their career, their performance, any interesting pieces of trivia we have picked up. And since this is a big Londo episode, we're going to be talking about the actor who played Raoul. No, I'm kidding. We're talking about...
I was going to make the joke if you didn't, so yeah.
Thank you, Bartek. You and I are the same guy. But no, we're actually talking about Londo himself. From time to time, we do actually like to go over the main cast members when the episode has
was the
no
previous
guests.
one Talia?
No, the previous one I think was Franklin, when we talked about it.
I was here for the Franklin one. Yeah.
Bartek. Maybe there was someone else. I can't remember. But I'll go over the list
When
at
did
some
you do
point.
the Marcus one?
Oh, yeah.
Because he's not around anymore, so...
We didn't do Marcus, did we? I don't think we did.
Do it for the final episode, because they talk about him.
All right, I'll do it in the final episode when they show up his picture of his cryo tube. But, Rachel, we're doing Peter Jurasik,
Yes.
who plays Londo Mollari.
Yes.
We all like his performance in the show, yeah?
Mm-hmm. I like him. He's funny.
He's funny.
But also sad.
Sad clown.
If you had to give a quick fire overview, Bartek, what is it about Peter Jurasik's performance that is just stands out in this cast of actors?
I guess going back to, I already brought up the first impression in this recording of, you meet him at the bar, he's talking to Mr. Garibaldi, who does appear in this episode for a scene. And he, he has his own issues there, but the environment that he's introduced in is a sociable environment. And often in works of media, when you have characters that are at a bar, usually they are in an intoxicated state and they're being very honest about things. And you have that sort of energy with Londo, especially really early on. In an environment that is very sociable, like a bar with, didn't you say there were monkeys in the gathering?
There were monkey men bartenders, yeah.
I'm sure maybe, I don't remember the monkey bartenders, but I'm sure that's psychologically associated to Londo as well. But also you also get the element of like him saying very poetic things. Like, was it the gathering where he said that Amores?
Yes, and that the Centauri Empire is a tourist attraction.
Yeah, he's...
open from 9 to 5, Earth time.
Basically, I only remember that one scene from him in The Gathering, but like so many little things are brought up there which do get expanded on incredibly. Like, I've talked about the big rise in this episode. That whole scene in his introduction is basically highlighting multiple times over the low point for him and his race and how they used to be so glorious and, the tension with that other race, the Narn. So he's got a really good first impression. He's got all these likable qualities that work well in other forms of media. He can be very funny at times. He's got an interesting and unique dynamic with most of the characters, Veer, Garibaldi, later on Lanier, the main characters when that switches over. He's just got so much potential there. While also carrying this fun persona, and it's interesting to see that fun element played with. I remember when I got to the point where, the outfit switches and he's done bad stuff and you're like, ooh, he's a bad guy now. You made some sort of passing comment about like, oh yeah, it's kind of a little bit harder to like him, isn't it? And yeah, you're playing with the expectation and you're playing with what's been established so far. So it's really fascinating that this character managed to stick around for the entire show and have an arc that lasts basically all of it.
Yeah, he even says during this episode that I've been on this station longer than most people. I've been here for 5 years and I'm getting such disrespect from this motherfucker. You give him a badge and a uniform and he thinks he runs the place.
Like, I remember, I think it took a little bit longer for Jakar to start, things were established about him early on too, but I do remember there was that notion of like,
He's framed as a villain.
Yeah, they were hitting a lot of the same beats, and I made that self-aware comment of like, oh yeah, he sure is being the bad guy in a lot of episodes.
And then in an episode like 6, he's like, not everyone is as they appear, by the way, in even me. And you're like, ha ha ha, you're the lizard guy with red eyes. You're evil.
Yeah, you're going to be evil for 110 episodes in a row.
And not become the Jesus figure of the show.
And not become the Book of Jakarman.
I really like Peter Jurasik's performance as Londo. One thing that I've really attached myself to on this particular experience of podcasting is he does all of the very comedic, loud, over-the-top things well, but he is so good at the restrained, at the quiet, these just bitterness that emanates from the character, but just he has to repress so much, and just scenes of him reacting with just his eyes in horror, and you see him just in his face have to hide his feelings and bury them, but we, the audience, can see that, is something that is really magnificent. In this one, in The Very Long Night of Londo Mollari, we can lay out to you the emotional roller coaster that Peter Jurasik has to play. And when he has to go big, he goes big, but for most of the episode, he's really subdued. Yes, he has the over-the-top hair and the teeth and the accent, but when he's lamenting that no one will miss him, it's very dour, very downbeat, but Peter Jurasik just has this energy.
The physicality of making Londo such a bombastic character feel small is not an easy thing to do, but he does it. He makes it look easy.
He has very expressive eyes. It's a lot of the work comes from the eyes with Peter Jurasik as Londo. And Rachel, it's the thing where I say, oh, who do you like more, Jakar or Londo? And there's also that thing of like, who's the best actor in the show, Peter Jurasik or Andreas Katsoulis? And it's hard because in the end, it doesn't matter. Both of them are great actors.
Yeah.
Both of them stand out. Both of them are alluring, to Bartek's point, because they go on these arcs that you don't fully realize, or even if you do, like Londo seems like pretty highlighted, you get to still have the joy of seeing these performers bring to life these really tough things. And so let's get into a bit of Peter Jurasik and his career, his life. We won't go too hard because he's one of the most beloved actors in the show. A lot of his stuff has been detailed.
And he still gives interviews.
He gives interviews. Our good friends at Grey 17 Podcast gave a great interview with him, but
I saw some clips of that in the morning, yeah.
There's some great stuff to learn, and I am not actually that familiar with his work outside of B5. I've seen some, but not a lot.
No.
I know of some of the shows because it's brought up in interviews. Yes, Hill Street
Matlock.
Blues. Tron people. He's in Tron. He plays a nebbish computer program. And that's a thing that's what Peter Jurasik is known for. And that's what he loves, and that's what he's comfortable with, which is comedy. I've seen him talk about, yeah, it's great to get all the dramatic stuff that I got to do in B5, but like I'm a comedy guy. I love doing comedy. That's what I love doing. That's what I live for. And so when you look at his roster of work, a lot of it does have bit parts where he comes in and he says a funny line.
He was in Taxi. Or he was in this episode of Columbo or whatever.
MASH. And he'll just be the nebbish guy because in reality, he just has, he has the big nose and he wears glasses and things and he has like the short curly hair and he's schlubby looking and he has this His voice in real life is very funny to hear once you hear it outside of Londo, where he just sounds like a New York taxi driver. I know it isn't that accent, but he just sounds like he's pulling up a cab.
It's funny because he was born in Queens, right? In a Jamaica hospital. But then, like, moved away from Queens when he was still a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't have the Jamaican accent.
Thank you, Bartek.
But you were going to say something, Bartek.
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, this is going to really shock you guys. I haven't seen him in a single thing other than Babylon 5.
What?
You haven't seen Tron?
I haven't seen Tron.
What's your excuse? You know who's Tron?
I played Kingdom Hearts 2, so does that count?
you know who Tron is.
Yeah, I do.
It's Bruce.
Yeah. Who I don't think we really talked that much about in the episode.
He doesn't have that much to do.
Yeah, exactly.
He gets to be there and go, that Lanier.
Yeah, I know what death's like.
That Londo.
That's not special.
It was nice seeing his facial hair again.
Yeah. Oh, yes, his goatee. The goatee era.
But what I was going to say was when I was scrolling through IMDb, because I had to find out, something about him to bring to this discussion. And it's not a unique point, but I was looking at, stuff that he had bit parts in, and there was like a recurring thing of like, if he wasn't a major character in a thing, he would be in either 1, 8, or 12 episodes. It was like a lot of recurring numbers of like, I might be a bit wrong about that, but I noticed that like 1 and like lower double digits was appearing a lot. So yeah.
Ryan, were you aware that Bartek was into numerology?
I didn't know, but now I do.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense for where he's at.
I guess my real name is Andreas Kastoulas.
Ooh, there you go. But in your endeavors, Bartek, of looking stuff up for the spotlight, what are some interesting things you found when looking over Peter Jurasik?
Really not all that much that wasn't just everywhere. It just seemed to be, he started off in theatre. He was doing a lot of bit parts in comedy and drama. And I think it said that he, retired from acting in 2003 for the most part and was teaching not acting, but like film or something like that.
Yeah, he moved back to the East Coast.
Yeah. And
I think that was around the same time.
One of the last things I saw him in was in One Tree Hill. That was a series that was on in my youth.
That was like the 2000s, right?
Yes, and I remember seeing him in an episode and recognizing his face, but being thrown off because he wasn't in the makeup and he wasn't doing the voice. And I'm like, I know you, though. It's Londo. And I remember as a kid being so excited because with the actors who play aliens, very few of them I have seen outside of Babylon 5. And when I do, it's like, oh, they're not in the makeup, so you're having to figure out if it's them or not. And even with someone like Andreas Katsoulis, who I've seen in other things, he's in prosthetics. So I'm like...
A lot.
So I haven't seen him outside of prosthetics all that much.
Being just his face.
And when I watched Lost, I stayed on it for another season of Lost because Mira Furlan, who plays Delenn, was brought in. And I'm like, hey, it's Delenn. So I'll watch it. Because I trust Delenn. So I watched that show a bit longer than I should have. Because I'm like, hey, it's her.
I think the closest I have is, I've seen Stephen Furst in this, and he does really good as Veer, and his directed episodes are just really top tier. And I've also seen Magic Kid. I'm like, how's this the same guy?
I know. And let's not forget, he was in Animal House, the great comedy classic with John Belushi. But
my big one would be, though, that Robert Atkin Downes played him in Barry Alien, and I've heard him in things.
And Byron.
Remember Byron.
First, I have a element from his childhood, one that connects him to Bartek, and one that connects him to you, Ryan.
Is he Polish?
No.
Is he me?
Okay.
Because Ryan said that we're the same person, you and I.
You know what's really sad? She said it isn't Polish related, and I all the air just went out of me because I'm just like, what is it then?
I wonder too. My middle name is Piotr, which is the Polish version of Peter.
No, okay. That's not what I went with.
Go on. Hit us.
No.
Hit us.
What kind of school did you go to, Bartek?
Oh, is he Catholic?
Catholic.
Well, I didn't go to Catholic, but yes, I grew up Catholic. You're right.
No, it's separate facts.
Okay.
Separate facts.
My primary school was St. Peter's.
After Peter Jurasik.
Yeah.
The greatest Catholic of Queens.
Yeah. Don't you know that he's the guy that greets you when you go to the gates of heaven?
Yes, Rachel. So he's he Catholic, raised Catholic, went to Catholic school. Good Catholic boy.
And your somewhat connection with him is also childhood related.
Okay, what is mine? Is it that he has curly hair? Because I have curly hair.
No.
Okay, what is it?
It's that they both looking back on it, my childhood was oddly idyllic.
Oh, yes. That's nice. One of the things that I really like about Peter is he brought some really weird stuff to B5, like the accent for Londo. That's just him. Ah, yes, I'll do it like this. And the wig. The hair. I don't know if you heard this story about it, but this is a classic. But he in the pilot, he was combed up the hair and went over to JMS and was like, hey, I think we should do it like this as a gag. That was him just joking around, and JMS just was like, yeah, sure. So then you're stuck for 5 years with the hair like this, and JMS still to this day will do a commentary track just being like, that hair, the hair. He goes, I feel regret about the hair on a level. And I just adore that it all got spawned from Peter Jurasik being like, wouldn't it be funny?
I didn't hear about the hair one, but yeah, you've told me in one of those clips that I watched from that interview, he was talking about how the voice influenced some other actors. You've told me the Reefer one, and one of the clips I watched was him talking about Stephen First's audition. And how a bunch of the other people going for the role were trying to do the impression.
And he just wasn't going to do it. I also appreciate that as an actor, Peter Jurasik, to help get into the Londo voice, would have his key phrase, which is, Mr. Garibaldi. Because he says that a lot in the show in the early seasons.
And it's great. It's great.
And how he would start most lines with, at the beginning of it. And once you know that, it's very, very noticeable. Mr. Garibaldi. Delenn. My good dear friend, Lamy.
It's funny how that happens. You just need to remember the beginning of something, to do something to get ball rolling. I had a weird thing the other day where I was thinking about the Bee Gees, and I like their music. And I wanted to just think to myself, I'll sing Saturday Night Fever to myself. And I started singing one of their songs. And once I got to the chorus, I'm like, I'm singing the wrong song.
Wow.
I have a couple of quotes from an interview that I found with him that I thought were just really cute. Just really cute. So he started acting in high school. And he had this to say about what it was like after he was cast in his first high school play. Acting swept me away from everything I thought I was and began to define everything about who I was becoming.
Peter Jurasik, whenever he does the convention circuit, he's really lively and energetic. There's this great video online of him as Londo answering questions and doing stuff, and then halfway through, the makeup person comes and takes off the makeup and he slowly becomes Peter during the discussion, and there's this awkward middle phase where he just has the bald cap, and he talks about how he would also play this other character when he was in this mid-phase. And so he's just this little old guy that he would play, and it's really delightful. And he was very much liked by the cast and crew. Him and Andreas were good friends, and him and Stephen First were good friends, where him and Stephen First are comedy guys, and so they would always be joking and making fun and getting in trouble in between takes, while him and Andreas were great friends in the opposite way, where Andreas was a bit more quiet and reserved, but they still struck up that devil-may-care friendship, and they were very dedicated to the work that they had to do. And you see it. You see it in each scene in this episode between the two of them, and in between the two of Stephen First and Peter, where there's just there's just something comfortable between those actors, but
they're at ease.
But there's a difference between those those duos.
Yeah, I can't remember which website it was that I read it on, but in passing it mentioned he and Andreas would improvise goofy things on the side, and they did a whole infomercial for the Book of Jakar, and it's oh god, to be a fly on the wall to see that.
When he got out of Catholic school, even though he'd enjoyed acting in high school, he almost took a different career path. What do you think that was, Ryan?
I know what it is. I've heard him talk about it.
Bartek?
Was it teacher?
Nope.
No?
In a way.
In a way?
Mm-mm.
Drill sergeant?
No.
Well, what's one piece
Catholic School.
None.
Yes.
He could pull it off.
Yeah.
He could be the nun from Blues Brothers.
So he did enter the seminary, but I think his goal was to become a priest, not a nun. But he was much more spiritual and philosophical in this particular interview that I read than I'd seen in other ones. And he noted that he appreciated like going through the Catholic education system because it gave him such a good education. And he went to the seminary because it like meant so much to him. But he didn't like being told how to be spiritual. And he said it was just a little too much like being in the army. So that's why he left the cemetery.
Seminary. He also left the cemetery, but...
Too many dead people.
You're dying, Londo.
I know.
Thank you all so much for listening, but the most important thing to ask is, does the very long night of Londo Mollari get a yum or a yum-yum? Obviously, I give this a yum-yum.
Yum-yum.
Yum-yum. Without a doubt.
Yum-yum.
Yeah, I was always going to give this episode a yum-yum even before we recorded it.
Yum-yum.
I did have, that sort of niggling feeling of like, I haven't rewatched the show, so a lot of this isn't hitting as well. But after discussing it, it's a much more firm yum-yum than I walked in with.
We have yet to hear what episode 3 of season 5 is going to be about. So I better get the DVD description for the episode ready to hear what will be happening next time on Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
Episode 3, The Paragon of Animals. If not by force of reason, perhaps by force of arms. When several groups refuse to sign the Declaration of Principles, Sheridan uses the White Star Fleet to gain new respect for the fledgling alliance. That gives a lot to go off of. I remember this episode, but not because of that plot, but because of a certain long-haired friend that is in that one a lot, who has many things to say. Oh, how I will not forget him. I will always remember my good friend. Ruel, of course. We're all talking about Ruel with his long goatee.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the guy that had a song written after him.
Oh. Can we not talk about the Byron song today? That's for another discussion.
Well, I'm not going to be on anymore, so I have to hint
you
it.
have to.
You know what else I think would be coming in a future episode? The reference to Nagrath.
Oh,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Nagrath.
We gotta
Would this episode
plug
have
the
been
video.
better if...
Yes. I mean, I think I know what you're going to say, but actually say it before I say it.
If in his dream, one of the voices of reason in Londo's head was Nagrath,
Okay,
a character he never met.
Highlighted, bolded, italics, and underlined, yes.
Thank you very much for your expert opinion. Now, Bartek, you and I host a podcast together. We talk about movies over there. Could you tell everyone listening a bit more about what we are doing over at Spit and Polish Presents?
Well, since you asked so nicely, sure. We host a podcast called Spit and Polish Presents, and we host a show titled Pictures Powwow on it, where every week we talk about a film that has come recommended from either me, you, Ryan, or you, the listening people. In that order, it's a 3-week cycle.
Which doesn't include me.
Literally the first listening people's choice was a Rachel choice.
But she doesn't listen to the
I don't
podcast.
listen.
She doesn't listen to this podcast.
To be fair, I don't think I've listened to a Pictures Powwow yet.
Wow.
I've listened to little bits of them just to have a little giggle at some memories.
From the great social media posts that Ryan makes.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I make 2/3 of them.
Thank you. But yes, we talk about movies on there that come recommended. a variety. Some of them include people from Babylon 5. Bartek's favorite movie ending ever. It does involve Claudia Christian from the gnome named Gnorm, in which a puppet gives her a thumbs up.
It cuts away from her to a puppet giving her a thumbs up.
Freeze frame roll credits. That is possibly one of the best freeze frame roll credits that we've ever done on the podcast. Right next to cutting class, where the dad says, "Have you guys been cutting class?"
And then the music smiling,
and the music swells. Freeze frame credits.
We were so close to matching the gnome named Norm thing.
We were in a recent episode
with a terminal velocity, but it just had to cut to something right after.
It was such a shame.
Yeah, it was so perfect.
But Spit and Polish Presents can be found underneath Rachel's sigh of relief on social media platforms under Spit and Polish Presents. And we can be found, YumYumPodcast, on social media as well under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. We have an email address if you want to contact us directly, which is
yumyumpod@gmail.com.
And if you want more content, more fun, more time with us, we have a Patreon where we go through so much stuff over there. So YumYumPodcast is on Patreon if you want to support the show to get bonus content, hang out with us, talk to us. We're on Discord. You get to be a part of the group Discord when you join our Patreon. That is it, Rachel. That's all we have to say, except for we have to acknowledge it.
Good eating to you.
Good eating to you. Jakar did not say that when Londo said sorry. Jakar should have smacked his chest and said, "Good eating to you, Mollari," and then walked away. But he didn't, because he's a coward. Maybe he needs an internal monologue with himself. Maybe he needs to have a heart attack dream sequence in which he goes through all these horrible events.
He gets high on dust again.
He gets high on dust again, and it's the Jakar from The Gathering with the weird makeup and the shrill voice. And he's like, "How come you do?" It's like Mo when Mo has his internal dialogue where it's like, "How come you don't talk with your accent no more?" It's just Jakar saying, "How come you don't say good eating no more?"
He says, "I thought I was Jakar, but I'm Jakoward."